That's my nickname. Okay.
I'm
I
going to
think
start
you guys are
doing.
live. I think Sean
Yep.
pushed the button.
Yeah, we're live. So, greetings, fellow nerds. Welcome to another episode of Between Two Nerds, where we talk with prominent guests about all aspects of the networking industry, from protocols old and new to industry trends and drivers to upcoming technologies, and as always, things you should know to further your career. Mr. Tansura, it's great to see you again.
It's great to see you too. It's been a long time, and it's about time we meet again, right?
It is. It is. We've sort of been neglecting this show. It's been a lot going on with both of us, and the show has suffered for it. But we're hoping to get back onto a regular schedule. I say that every time, don't I? We're going to have a regular schedule. But today, we're really happy to have with us our friend Scott Robohn, who has been a guest on the show. What, 2 or 3 times now?
I think twice. I think this is
Yeah,
number
yeah.
3.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
happy.
Magic, right?
That's right. I'm happy to help you get back into a regular cadence, right? I'm sure this is what's going to come out of today's episode. So
absolutely, yeah. We'll just make you a regular guy, and then we've always got something to talk about. So I have to ask before we even, and I should say, I screwed up the title of the show for anybody that saw that title, and I said Total Network Automation, and it's Total Network Operations is what we're going to be talking about today. But since we're talking about automation, and the times you've been on here, the last 2 times has been in the auspices of the Network Automation Forum and AutoCon and all that. So I at least wanted to touch bases with you on that. And how's everything going with the Network Automation Forum?
Things are going really well. How much of a detail update to give you? We had AutoCon 3 in Prague in May, so just a few months ago.
I really hate that I missed that. I was just determined to go.
Missed it too. Yeah. And I think you've both been in the venue. It's the Hilton Prague.
I've never been to Prague.
It's a classical IETF venue.
I have been to IETF there and Juniper SE events as well. So when we did a site visit, as I drove up to the building, it's like, I remember this hotel, and lots of pleasant memories on both counts came back. So that was good. But all the materials online, I encourage anybody to check them out. We just, they get better with each one. And, Chris Grunham and I learn and improve with each one, and can't say enough about the partnership and what's being built there. We are now gearing up full steam for AutoCon 4 in Austin in November. It's the 17th to the 21st. So that last full week before Thanksgiving week in the US. We're sized for up to 1,000 people. It's no guarantee that we'll actually hit 1,000, but I think we'll beat our Prague numbers and then some. So that's all coming together. And probably one really important thing for you two nerds and anyone else listening, the calls for workshop proposals and presentation proposals are open until August 18th. Cool. So if you have an idea in network automation that you'd love to put in front of a wider audience, you've got just over 2 weeks to present for consideration for November 2025. And we're always open to really, really good proposals. All of those proposals go in front of the whole NAF advisory board. We have an extremely democratic process to review everything that comes in. And, Chris and I are happy to talk about things that we think are important, but it comes down to the board reviewing all the proposals. So
you're liberal on what gets in and otherwise, right?
Well, you've got a body of work that you can look at to see what's been selected in the past too.
Yeah.
And rule number 1 is we want to keep it real, right? We're not interested in architecture. We're not interested in just the theoretical. We want to see things that have actually, been implemented in networks or are close to being implemented in networks. So that's kind of, a good rule of thumb to think about. but any interesting proposal that touches on some element of network automation, put it in and let's talk about it.
Absolutely. And I can say just from the perspective of an attendee, the sessions for the audience here, the sessions are always fantastic and informative. And as Scott said, there's minimal marketing. It is always the presentations are always experience based, and some of the most interesting presentations I've seen in any kind of industry forum I've been to. And the attendance is always amazing. You said you're planning for 1,000, and it would not surprise me at all if you don't sell out, or if you sell out again for Austin, because yeah, I was going to say I'll be there for sure, but I was thinking, well, I'll jinx myself if I say that, but
right.
I'm
just make sure to give us all the links so we can publish them. People know where to look, how to register.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we should have you and Chris back on specifically to talk about AutoCon, and maybe talk about AutoCon's past and just the evolution of it and lessons learned and all of those kinds of things. Those are always interesting to hear about.
Well, we're happy to do that. Let me just throw out a couple other teasers and interesting developments that have happened in just the past few months. So for AutoCon 4, we're adding a day-long additional track on Thursday. That's the one full day of the conference, and we're kind of looking at a group of topics that are deeper dives in network automation, and then a group of topics that can be considered business and leadership issues. How to talk to executives to drive network automation projects. How to really accurately represent return on investment. So that's unique for AutoCon 4. I also want to call out, we're doing some really interesting blog posts using AI large language models for some post-processing, where we're taking both conversations that are happening in Slack and coming up with, here's a collection of perspectives and views. One we just published was on the quality of APIs in the networking industry, and how, there have been promises and there are things that have been letdowns. And it's not it's not two people driving an opinion. It's a collection of commentary that people who participate in NAF Slack have contributed to. So that's a really interesting use of the community and, this new class of tools that can help us assimilate that info really easily.
So how you get proper opinion. You do manual agentic mode. You feed the input to 4 measures, you get the answer, and then you manually reshuffle them.
Well, there is, you always have to check, right? You always have to do some shaping, on the outputs, but it's been tremendous. And then the other thing we're doing is, for all the recorded talks, we are now also publishing summaries of those talks that can be taken straight from the YouTube transcripts. Nice. And Chris is the genius behind all this. He's figured out how to make all this work, and he's just doing an incredible job with it.
That's amazing. And you mentioned the NAF Slack. That, if I'm not mistaken, that's open to anybody that wants to join it, right?
That's correct. That's
correct. That's what I was thinking. And there is some terrific discussions going on there, and just some fun, casual, nothing to do with automation discussions every now and then too. It's kind of just a fun bunch of people to be on there, and I tend to be kind of quiet on there, but I follow it all the time.
So another action point for you to give us the link to share.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah. I will do that, and I'll just say, it's very straightforward. Network automation.forum, not .com, not .net, not .ai, networkautomation.forum. The Slack link is in the upper right of the home page, and then you'll see very clearly, the AutoCon 4 registration information. But I will provide the link for inclusion in show notes. Yep.
Yeah, for anybody, that's on here. If you use Slack at all, it's very easy to find. NAF.
Yep. So lots of good stuff going on there, regardless of whether or not you use the correct title for the episode, Jeff. But
well, I have to say before we get to where I know you're going, I have been chasing our mutual friend Jeremy Schulman, who is network administrator, network architect with Major League Baseball, and he's always a presence at the AutoCons, and since the last one that was here in Denver, I've been chasing him to be a guest on this show, and of course he's just a really busy guy, but I think we're going to get him sometime in August.
That's great.
And I think on the same topic, we should also get Wim Hendricks. We met at ATF, had lunch. He's doing so much exciting stuff using YAML for that. Just amazing how much, and he's been around a long time, and he's coding by himself, and
Well, I'm making a note to myself. Jeff is going to get
Wim Hendricks.
going to book him.
I think Wim is presenting.
You just volunteered.
Wim and his work with leveraging Kubernetes for network automation, single-handedly convinced me that I need to stop avoiding understanding Kubernetes. Like he's the one who nudged me. I at least need to go beyond surface knowledge. So he's having an impact for sure, just like Jeff T said. Mm-hmm. So highly recommend him. I actually recommended him to somebody else that you mentioned earlier in this discussion, Jeff, who is thinking about some IPv6 issues with regard to Kubernetes. So.
Well, another topic that you mentioned in passing is APIs, and we really need to be doing a show on APIs.
Sure.
I actually tried to get Kat Gorinsky a while back on the show, but I guess there were some issues with where she works, and
sure.
But she's another regular presenter at AutoCon and talks a lot about APIs. I would love to get her sometime. But anyway, we should get to the topic at hand, huh? So I'm just gonna ask about as broad a question as I can. What the heck is total network operations?
It's a fair question.
Self-defining as it kind of is, but maybe not.
So total network operations is an idea that actually started bubbling for me back at AutoCon 0. And I'll give you the short answer, and then let me give you a little genesis on how it evolved and where it is today. And the shortest answer I can give you is total network operations is a project, a podcast, and a framework for elevating network operations and IT ops in general. Okay, Scott, what the heck does that mean? Well, let me take you through it. If you remember at AutoCon 0, John Willis was one of the keynote presenters.
Mm-hmm.
And John is big in the DevOps movement. And he also relies on a historical figure from manufacturing and quality control by the name of W. Edwards Deming.
Okay.
And so you might say, what does that have to do with network engineering? Well, what does it have to do with DevOps, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of Deming ideas that have gone into the development of DevOps. The connection for me with kind of Deming's ideas around quality control, small experiments, empowering people to try different things in the network, putting the right responsibility on leadership, like all of this resonated to me along the same time that I was thinking about, look, DevOps is a set of interesting principles, but I'm skeptical of the direct application to network engineering. So I kind of got this thought from John Willis's talk. What if I could just reapply Deming principles directly to NetOps? And that's how this all got started. I won't say it's a straight line, but it got me thinking about, okay, think outside our silos, whether that's just network automation or just network engineering in general. And I've done a couple things with it. I basically said, well, okay, what would it look like to think about your ops environment holistically, where the network infrastructure is just a piece of it. I've also got, whatever messaging systems I use, or whatever trouble ticking systems I use. And I need to think about the adjacencies between the IP layer and the optical layer, and IP and security. And I've probably defined maybe 13 to 15 different disciplines that you really need to think about how they work together. So that was job number one. How do you think about your operations environment holistically? Then I thought about, in the context of network automation, there's a lot of tools and a lot of things developing that ops teams really need to take on the responsibility for themselves to be proactively evaluating. And that's hard in an ops role, right? It flows downhill, as they say, right? And the ops team often inherits the decisions that are made by financial decision makers, architects, and engineers, and they get a lot flowing down at them. I'm going to keep it a family show, right? a lot flowing, where you're often ruled by the tyranny of the urgent, right? Yeah. So how do you develop corporate discipline around, should I be learning Go for automation instead of Python? That's just one really specific example. But another trend happened, or was happening right around the time I started thinking about that, and that's the impact of AI and NetOps. And if I could pick one technology area where people really need to start decoding and understanding what's happening, it would be AI for real transformation of how you operate a network. So kind of these ideas together, looking at everything as a holistic system, proactively looking at tech for use in your operations environment, and kind of participating in your own rescue, you taking responsibility for it. It motivated me to just talk to other people about what's going on, to highlight, operational, I want to say best practices, but, even at a lower level, if somebody's doing something really interesting in their network, don't put the pressure of calling it a best practice. Let's find a way to shine light on it. So I bugged the people at Packet Pushers for at least 6 months, maybe 8 or 9 months. And we started a show called Total Network Operations. And that's been a vehicle to, number one, for me to talk to lots of folks a lot smarter than me, which is not very hard, by the way, and who are super interesting and have really good ideas that they want to get out there. And so that's been a way to shine light on good ideas, but also help me kind of develop this body of knowledge. So let me pause and breathe. That probably brings some questions for you.
So, kind of boiling down a lot of that, this is a framework in progress.
Correct.
Cool. Okay.
And a framework that shouldn't just be defined by one person.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
What are the outputs? How do you see the progress, milestones for the project? What do you intend to do?
Great question. There are at least 2 categories of outputs, and maybe more. One kind of is focused on individual contributors. The other is focused on organizations. For individual contributors, there's a whole bunch of things that we need to know today that are not subnets and spanning tree. That's all important, and that's base knowledge. And the things that you can get from, vendor certification programs and even some of the industry neutral stuff. I've kind of put this label together, Next Gen Network Engineer, NGNE. And I'm actually working on, call it a curriculum, for lack of a better word, of 100 level, 200 level, 300 level, and 400 level, things that are really useful to know, to operate as a network engineer in today's environment. So that's really a kind of a guideline for, here are some things coming at you that you need to know. And let me give you a couple specific examples there. This is definitely DevOps and net DevOps adjacent. We live in a world where software development tooling is plentiful and mature. And man, there are some really good tools out there that I can also use to manage my network and my network infrastructure. You know, GitOps and GitHub or GitLab or whatever your favorite source code control system is, that's something that today's network engineers really need to understand and know how to implement.
Yes.
Right. The concept of a CI/CD pipeline and this whole idea of independent checking of not my code, but my configurations or my automation scripts for that matter. Getting other eyes on it to see what's happening and to be, you know, an objective reviewer makes a lot of sense. And a lot of traditional network engineers really bristle at that. I've never had anybody checking my configs before. I'm a JNCIE. I'm a CCIE. I don't need anybody looking over my shoulder. There are some interesting attitudes that require some adjustment on that front.
Yeah. There was a quote that was displayed at AutoCon here when it was in Denver, and I brought it up, and now I can't remember the exact quote, but I was so amused by it. I took a picture and I posted it on my Facebook page and pissed off a lot of CCIEs over it. But
that was from Anna Claiborne's keynote at AutoCon 2 last year. I'm quite sure. Yep.
Yes, it was. And your memory might be better than mine, but it was basically one of the things that, and this is not a knock against Cisco at all, but it was just sort of amusing. Said one of the things Cisco has really accomplished well is creating this certification program where now you can type something in on the CLI and make something happen and feel really good about yourself.
Yeah.
You know, as long as it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
What it created an industry. It really, and I think it has for the rest of the networking certification industry. And the reason my recall is there is number one, I swim in that content, right? Like and I have recommended that talk to many, many people. It's probably the best research keynote delivery I've ever seen. And Anna, I hope you hear this and recognize that, you know, that's how highly that talk is held. It's a great example. To the point of, you know, being a CLI jockey, I think even if we assume the best motives, let's assume that it was the right thing to do at the time, right? To really create structure around how do I operate this complex network infrastructure? It does have its own complexity for sure. You know, but it definitely had negative side effects, you know, in terms of adopting programmatic interfaces to configuring the network or instantiating network behaviors.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's I mean, the thing you hear so much around network operations, these network operations, network automation, and so forth, is that you can't. And Jeff, you and I know this from when you and I were working together at a previous company that around automation was. You can't look at your network as individual devices anymore. You know, it's got to be approached as a holistic entity, which goes exactly into the whole DevOps attitude and approach.
Yep. Which since then has also significantly extended to servers, to application of the servers, unless you have comprehensive view of everything that runs, again, from kind of application framework to congestion state in your network, you are not seeing everything, you don't understand everything that happens, and you don't understand why, which is the most important part.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let's come back to that holistic view piece, because I think there's a lot more to say there. I do want to answer the second part of Jeff T's question on outcomes or, you know, deliverables from the framework or the approach. There's a lot more to say on individual contributor education and training. You know, we'll leave that for another time. suffice it to say, I called out 400, 4 course levels. So there's plenty to mine there. But there's also the organizational transformation side of things, right? You have new tooling. Do you just want to keep doing things the same way over and over? Now just automating it, or just saying I use AI? Or should you really consider re-engineering your workflows based on the power tools you now have in your toolbox? That is a rhetorical question. And that takes organizational understanding and commitment to say, okay, let's rethink how we do things. And I would say the progression in my thought has been, well, certainly that applied with just network automation, but now AI, large language models, agentic operation, what's happening with MCP offers a whole new set of ways that you might really need to rethink how you're running the network. So there's a conversation and a set of engagements with operations leadership, even whole network engineering, network architecture team. Think differently about how you're actually getting things done on a day-to-day basis. And of course, you both know change is so easy. Everyone's always ready to just think of a new way of doing things.
Yeah.
Probably important point. The strategy has been this: I cannot code, right? I know how to type stuff, but
right.
And I think we've been discussing should network engineer code, right? It's been discussion that I know for the last 10 years. And practically, you had to learn how to. And given advances in tooling specific to AI, God forbid, I wouldn't let code something that's highly optimized and need to run in real time. Right. If you need someone else for you to write piece of Bash script, some piece of Go, Python, that framework, it just great. I'm using it all the time for personal reasons, for work reasons, but it just works and it rarely fails. It might not be as optimized as someone with 30 years of experience would have written it, but practically it's good enough for most use cases. And important point here is to learn how to express what you need, which goes more kind of architectural way of thinking, but think about what you want to get, how you want to get it, and know how to express it. It sounds like a set of qualities that you need to progress in your career no matter what. You needed it 40 years ago. But now it can also be valuable in generating the outcomes. Because again, the quality is just good enough. Could it be better? Yes. Works? Yes. Learn how to express what you want system to do for you, and there's a whole number of tools that can do it for you in 10 minutes. Right? So the kind of I cannot code, I hate like all the stuff around vibe coding and everyone is a coder, but for this specific task, it's good enough.
Yep. So let's touch on that real quick. When I first heard about vibe coding, my eyes immediately retreated into the back of my head, right? But you know what? It's not new. We've been doing this for decades as engineers. It's called prototyping. Mm-hmm. And we as engineers have been building models and prototypes of things for decades to prove out certain functionality that we would never call production ready. Yeah, this is fully baked and secured, and we should push this into production now. What I'm telling you is I've kind of a convert to it, right? This just makes complete sense, right? To go straight from ideation to a minimally functional model, or maybe even more than minimally functional, and think about how that changes what operators can do, but what product managers can do. Pick any role and think about how transformational that is to just go with, I have this idea in my head and I can type it down in English. Now I can actually feed that into a model and get something functional or semi-functional in very rapid turnaround. You
mentioned earlier, sort of jokingly about, transitions or new ways of doing things in networking is always so easy to.
Right.
But how much of an obstacle to implementing total network operations as a concept do you see, because operations right now is so siloed? You've got your security organization, and you've got your servers and network architecture and all of that sort of thing. You've got your CCIEs that have one way of doing things. How much of an obstacle do you see that as being to getting to where you think we need to be in terms of operating modern networks?
So it's a real thing. Let me give you the positive view first. There are more and more organizations that are at least interested in hearing the story.
Yeah.
What could a path forward look like? And that's encouraging. We've had a couple engagements with a couple notable name institutions where they've heard, the tip of the iceberg message and say, come in and talk to us more about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say on as a workshop, a paid engagement, not just a sales engagement. So that's good. Now, going from interest to implementation, that's the next thing that we want to see more of, right? I see Jeff Tansura smiling wide on that. Interest does not equal implementation.
I am full of amazing KDS, man.
Right, sure. I'm interested in a lot of things that never ever get implemented. I mean, you both know me. I'm basically a generally hopeful person, and I tend to look on the positive side of things. And I do see interest growing. How do you get beyond the friction of just being interested to actually, empowering your network engineering team to do stuff and to actually think about how you're organized? You have to be able to demonstrate the benefit. Is there return on investment issue here? Are there, and that was part of my motivation for wanting to see more of that in Network Automation Forum, and one person's opinion. We'll see what other options come in, what proposals come in. So, but I'm personally very interested in that and building out the right models. I'm through the Total Network Operations podcast, I'm running into a lot of people that, have done this either in a sales motion for their product or in a professional services mode where they're trying to sell their services. And I know there could be initial reactions to that of, ooh, it's a selling activity. Well, it is, even if it's just internal to your organization.
Yeah.
You need to be able to understand what are the levers that you can use with your CFO, your COO, and down the food chain between you and those levels. I'm partially motivated on this by my own mistakes in my career, where for the longest time I just wanted to care about the tech. I don't really want to have an accounting conversation. I don't want to have a finance conversation. I just want somebody else to take care of that. And that was a naive perspective. Now it's not recent. I figured that out at least 10 or 15 years ago as an SE leader at Juniper. But you got to turn that into something tangible that bridges the gap between what the engineering and operations teams really need to do and put it in terms that business decision makers and financial decision makers can actually understand.
And money is always a powerful lever.
Yep.
When you start getting up to the CIO and CFO level.
Yep.
Yeah, I would really like to bring it back to my point.
Okay.
That used to be two completely separate streams, kind of completely independent of each other. What you do as engineer versus how you sell it to upper management. This is converging. The wording is a bit different, but practically you sell same thing to both.
Yeah.
And if you do it successfully, the management layer will buy it. The code generation level will generate right logic for you. So again, you need to become better at expressing the outcomes clear and kind of tangible values that attach to it.
I'm going to quote you, and I'm going to use that video clip at some point, and maybe even invite you as a guest lecturer. So I couldn't have said it better. So, yep.
Well, it's oh gee, I'd lost my train of thought. It's right there in the name, but everybody knows that that OpEx is the major expense in running a network, far more than CapEx. And so the appeal is right there. Of
why?
Anything
So
that
why the focus? Why the focus on CapEx versus OpEx?
Exactly. I assume that's a rhetorical question because I don't understand why that would. Maybe it's because, and Jeff and I both work for vendors, and but so we certainly know that. But vendors are certainly going to emphasize OpEx. Sorry,
one
CapEx.
kind of MBA mode. CapEx is sunk cost. OpEx is recurring cost.
Yeah.
Yep.
We want to sell you boxes. We want to sell you software.
Right. It's so much easier to identify, right? There's a PO from vendor J or vendor C or vendor N, using poorly coded words here. But I can see, oh, this is the check we need to cut for this hardware with this software this year. And maybe it's part of a 5-year plan for, network upgrades. The OpEx is distributed amongst your entire organization, and decoding and figuring out what the OpEx is this much more complicated exercise than the CapEx, which is so immediately identifiable.
Yeah.
I think that's root cause in my view. Sorry, that's JTAC coming out in me, root cause. So.
And you're very right. On one side, you've got procurement, a clear identity, clear budget, and cost center. On the other side, this vague organization that no one knows, kind of black boxing. So, I mean, it's not very much related to kind of our technical discussion, but should not be underestimated when you kind of think about it.
I'll throw an adjacent idea out here too. There are parts of the network where architectures are stabilizing. And let's just talk about spine leaf for regular data centers, right? Not necessarily the AI data center, but everybody who's building new data centers, and even in the AI space, spine leaf is kind of the default, right?
Yeah.
And because it works and it makes sense. And thank you, Mr. Klo. When it is Klo, it's not Kloss.
That's right.
For doing all the math, right, and kind of laying that out. As that stabilizes and we see more Broadcom everywhere from a forwarding layer, there's more commonality, even if it's packaged by different network providers. There's more room to do better through operations than necessarily making architectural decisions. So to say it in the most negative way, we can squeeze more out of ops than the architecture at this point. That's not universally true, but it's a place where we can shine the flashlight on, looking for how can we improve and how can we save OpEx versus just focusing on the next router purchase, switch purchase, firewall purchase, etc.
You fire everyone, you keep 3 people, you tell them either you make it work or
So that's a great part of the conversation, right? Because that is a fear, right? Oh, you're really efficiency experts, and you're just here to try and figure out how to reduce my staff. And nothing is ever that. That's rarely the crisp focus of somebody coming in and having conversations like this. I think part of this conversation necessarily includes there is disruption coming to our roles in network operations, in IT operations, and even up the stack. I don't think we should put our heads in the sand about this. I think the way to do that is to tackle it now and say, okay, what should our new workflows look like? What does that really require from a resourcing perspective? What does transition look like? You know, over years, hopefully. I think that's a mature part of this discussion, and I certainly include it in my pitches when I'm talking to customers. Sorry, you touched a nerve, Jeff T.
I figured. So I think it's a great initiative, and very much again, kind of this whole topic of DevOps came up almost 10 years ago, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of work that's been going on now. Like we got better telemetry, we got better modeling languages around it and all stuff, but kind of fundamentally, it's sort of in between. We were there that was typing wheel and an IP address, which was no good really. There's this beautiful world of, I don't know, intent-based networking, for lack of a better word. But we are somewhere in between and kind of not here, not there. So there's more tooling to get there, but to your work, we need to educate ourselves how to do it. We need to become better in some parts, specifically thinking and clear formulation of your ideas on one side. On the other side, maybe using CLI is not as important anymore, right? It's configuration is pretty much solved problem. The operation is not.
Right. Well, let me ask you two a related question. I'm going to turn this around to you guys. You know, we've talked about the expression of intent for a long time. And at some places we've been more successful and other places less successful in what expression of intent really looks like. Mm-hmm. I think there's a tie, maybe it's very direct, between prompting a large language model is an expression of intent.
Yes.
120%.
Okay, we did not collaborate on this. We did not talk about this before the show. So very good. Thank you.
But again, looking into kind of even pure ideas about intent-based networking, unless you can clearly express your intent, the output is garbage.
Sure.
Right. So it all boils down to ability to clearly express in abstract terms what you need, what you want it to be, what do you expect. And then on top of that, you put your KPIs, SLOs, and all other stuff to keep the operational side. But I think we understand the workflow and concept really, really well. Now it's just implementation.
Yeah. That's all.
You know, it's surprising. Speaking of AutoCon, it has always been surprising to me from the very first AutoCon, AutoCon 0, how often the question comes up, well, what do you mean by intent? Right. People seem to still not understand that, you know, kind of along the same lines, people, you know, talk about what do you mean by single source of truth?
And what are the unintended consequences?
Yeah, yeah. Right. And I'm kind of surprised that people don't understand that. Maybe it's because, you know, Jeff and I both, we were both involved in intent-based networking and kind of love the term and all of that, but and it just seems kind of obvious to us. But
and you know the fun part. So we published RFC on intent-based networking 3-4 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
I read it just during the last 8 years. It's a short RFC, a couple of pages. It still kind of stands to what it says. So from this perspective, nothing has changed. It's exactly expressing your intent, abstracting it, and then kind of generating something more specific on top of it. So the workflow is still the same workflow we thought about 5-7 years ago. It's just the implementation of such that is lagging, and surprisingly, there's pretty much no successful implementations of this. Right.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, no, go ahead, please.
So, you know, the gravity around AI and using LLMs is huge, and it's really important. Don't get me wrong, but there's other stuff that's still important too.
Yeah.
And other things that I'm basically actively recruiting for on the podcast in particular are some technical topics that I think are really important for next gen network engineers. Let me throw a few of them out, and you can comment or not comment depending on how you react to them. I think open networking is getting more traction than I ever expected it to.
Mhm.
When I worked for a disaggregated router vendor a few years ago, I never ran into Sonic, just to pick on Sonic in particular. And now, in some of my client work last year, 2024, was the first time I saw a large U.S. government organization issue an RFI for an open solution. And I worked with vendors that were basically saying, well, let's propose Sonic on these particular white boxes. Happen to be an edge core Acton solution. So that's a big deal. I'm not saying open networking or Sonic is for everyone, but how are you going to make good choices if you don't have a little background information or have never touched it before?
Mhm.
So that's something I'm definitely poking at. You may respond.
So, as you said, it's not for everyone. However, if you look kind of the total number of ports sold, I think Sonic outweighs the rest of the industry together.
Yep.
There are networks that are running only Sonic and really large networks.
Yep.
There are networks that run some parts of Sonic. There are networks that's based on size specifically and then something else on top of it. So one way or another, open networking is not something we are talking about, something we are doing. And make it familiar.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean it's whether you're talking about Sonic or whatever open networking.
Sure.
If you look at data centers, the way they run the rest of the data center, except for networking, for networking devices, is you choose your hardware and then you choose the operating system you're going to run on that hardware.
Yep.
As opposed to traditionally networking devices, you buy the thing and that comes with the operating system, and that becomes a restriction in itself of, does my staff know this particular operating system?
Right.
Maybe I really like that hardware, but now I've got to retrain everybody on whatever it takes to make it run. As opposed to just choosing the hardware because you like the hardware and then choosing the operating system that everybody understands how to run.
Yep. It's customer choices, right?
Yeah.
And my fundamental proposition is multiple viable choices are good for everybody, right? As long as you get educated in what those choices are. So
yeah.
The next bullet I had in my things to think about is basically data center everything. And if you take, the idea of total network operations and those adjacencies within the domains you need for operating the network, I think there's a direct analogy for operating the data center, especially with the criticality that we're seeing of what's going on, what does energy demand and power distribution look like, packing more and more stuff in racks. I think bringing the networking, compute, and storage discussion into the broader data center discussion, I'm actually having a lot of fun with this with some other client work that I'm doing. And we're going to show up in a couple different ways on this in a few months. Stand by. I'll let you know when when things like that are coming out. But taking that holistic view of the data center has just been fascinating for me. So that's something I think people need to understand. Okay, what's really going on delivering the power that I'm requiring for this rack, and now the 3,000 pounds of gear that can be in just one rack. And yes, I'm taking that from GTC this year, Jeff T.
And I'll bring a couple of points to that. There's three metrics that I really love: is cost of bit lost, right?
Yep.
For regular, enterprise data center, you lose TCP packet. Really, who cares? We'll retransmit, right?
We'll take care of
the
that.
data
Yep.
center, you lose a bit, suddenly, your application crashes. You need to roll back
Yep.
to
Yep.
last day of work. So the difference is significant, and you need to think about it. Specifically to data center, again, as you said, CLO is pretty much the standard. And, there's a lot of discussions about all kinds of esoteric topologies, from butterflies to dragons to whatnot, right? But practically, when it comes to deployment, it's CLO everywhere, right?
Yep.
In one form or another. So it's a extremely regular topology that allows high degree of standardization. And I think in our previous job with Jeff, we leverage this significantly because there are only a few ways you can really configure stuff, and what's actually another end of configuration because the topology is regular. So optimizing your operational practices around this standard way of connecting, configuring, it will bring a lot of benefits, right? Again, from cabling to power to cooling to routing. Again, routing in regular topology is very regular. Obviously, you can throw a lot of magic on it, like I do, but I don't think you really need in all cases. Just use it. I mean, it's regular, it's repeatable, whether you build something with 10 switches or 100 switches. At the end, the mutation from one size to another size is exactly the same.
Well, something you said earlier, or just a little moment ago, about networking, network, compute, and storage in data centers. Those have always sort of been separate entities, and even separate organizations sometimes for running a data center. Going back to something I said very early on about siloed organizations, and yet AI data center designs are sort of forcing us now to think about all of those things holistically, and the lines are becoming very blurred. I mean, you look at an AI data center, the NICs in the compute devices and in the storage devices are actively participating in the networking. And how much of that do you see as bleeding out? I mean, not everybody is designing AI data centers, but how much of that do you see as bleeding out into thinking about just traditional data centers?
So I don't see a lot of it yet. I do have this operational theory that it will start driving things that are just going to get broader commercial adoption. I think that's inevitable based on the spend. And that's what, more and more equipment providers will be focused on. So, I'm not sure we're going to see, just to make this really, really clear, we're probably not going to see InfiniBand leak out into the enterprise.
Yeah.
Right. Outside of a data center environment. But, in the development of Ultra Ethernet, those things may become standard and part of Ethernet everywhere, whether or not I exercise them or not. I will say, if you're in a position to analyze differences in InfiniBand versus Ethernet, or what's being promised in Ultra Ethernet, you really need to understand how InfiniBand works. And there's great public reading material available for that. So if you think you want to be, in a position to make a fair comparison, you need to go take a look at it. I went and educated myself on InfiniBand. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And just starting with the whole idea of RDMA, right? Remote direct memory access. Yeah. That's an oxymoron, but it shows the perspective of every GPU wants this memory that's soldered right next to me on this board to look like it's directly available to me. Like that. Yeah. That was my first step to understanding, why bit loss is so damaging in model training and AI applications.
Well, that's where it gets to the point I was making. I mean, I said NICs, but going all the way down to the GPU level, that all becomes part of the network now. It's the network is no longer a separate entity from the rest of the data center.
Yep, exactly.
And I think interesting development a lot of hype started around training-based model, right? It's something you would throw potentially hundreds of GPU on, you will run it for months, and it's for 10 companies in the world because no one else can afford it. Right? So that's something that the STEM companies are going to build. In many cases, it has a lot of IP that those particular companies do. So it's not for everybody. However, where we're getting now, it's really the importance of inference and specifically agentic AI. It's very overused term, but practically what it means, you still need a lot of hardware to make it work. The interactions between different agents are practically networking. All of bits are moving between servers, between GPUs, between NICs, so it's still networking. And traditionally, the thinking was, I have this high performance InfiniBand, Ethernet, doesn't really matter, your choice, what you do with it. However, it's high performance, it's lossless, it emulates pretty much your memory bus. But then it's DMA, whether remote or local, right?
Right.
And then I have the storage and everything else, that's classical enterprise, you can lose stuff. However, the inference, it changes significantly.
For sure.
The performance, ability to retrieve all the information. We are having longer context, right? When you load your 20-page PDF, you hope it stays in memory, right?
Right.
Which really requires more space, more memory, better networking. So practically what we see is really proliferation of inference networking, same place where we've seen training. So high performance, practically we see that most people will move to RDMA because it's faster, it doesn't require CPU, it's kind of NIC-to-NIC transfer. So again, if as enterprise, before you thought training, let Google's and similar do it. Inference is something you're going to do at your bank or your insurance company. Think about it. And again, you lose a bit, you've potentially lost really large transactions that's not recoverable. You need to go and retrieve it, retransmit it, there's cost. So even than last year, this year is important to understand semantics of high-performance networking. And I'm not talking about HPC, I'm talking about high-performance networking in general, what it means to be lossy versus lossless, what you do with it. And again, operations is most fundamental thing. You put the boxes, you connect them. What do you do then? You keep typing stuff, you keep looking at show counters and thinking, it's 27. So what, right? So all of this needs to be automated, and you need to bring global context that includes application level. If you're doing AI communication libraries level, you need to understand why this end is slower than that end. And the difference to everything else is collective. All the stuff is working together. If something is slow, everything is slow. If everything is slow, you are losing a whole bunch of money. So there's even more incentives to become better at operations and cohesive understanding of end-to-end systems.
Well, before we run out of time, let me just turn that into a call to action. I am interested in anybody who wants to talk about all the issues that you just brought up, Jeff, on total network operations. And I'm going after some of the, the neo cloud providers, CoreWeave, Crusoe Cloud, Applied Digital, you know who you are. Come on and talk about how you're managing all these things that Jeff Tansura just called out. Also, anything that has impact on operations. I'm terminally curious. I love having people on the show that I actually learn stuff from, and that is everybody. So, but that would be my ask, Jeff and Jeff. If you come across, interesting guests on your show that want to come have a more focused ops conversation, by all means, send them my way. I'm happy to talk to them.
Absolutely. And yeah, we are getting right to the top of the hour, and I wanted to be sure to, I mean, you've pretty much implied it as you've gone along, but you're not just doing a podcast. You're establishing a consulting practice around this.
Correct.
And I do want to plug that. How can people get in touch with you to discuss with you? Do they just look for you on packet pushers, or how do they reach you?
So the shortcut is I've moved all this consulting work into a new consultancy we formed this year called solutional.com. And I'm Scott at solutional.com. Please reach out. Happy to hear from folks that have questions or are interested in, what a 2-hour or half day or full day could look like, just talking about through this, and implications on your organization. We'd love to explore it with you. Thanks for asking.
Well, cool. And looks like we are right at an hour now. So we probably need to wrap things up. But Scott, thank you so much for joining. This has been a fun discussion, and I've said it about just a few guests before, but it's always it's a good show when you don't realize how fast the time has gone by.
Yes.
The discussion is so much fun.
I really appreciate you both, and it's so easy to talk to both of you. Thank you both very much.
Scott,
Well,
thank you, and great to see you. And we'll try to get back to our kind of normal cadence, bring in interesting guests. And Scott, we hope to see you soon again.
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Cheers.